Okay, let me share the link. Okay, let me share the link. Yes, this is yet another session that we are going to be having today. This is yet another session that we are going to be having today. If you are in, you can comment. Very good, Esther Nyambula. Hi, teacher. I'm already in. You are most welcome, Esther. I've shared the link out. You can share this with a friend. Tell a friend to also share this with a friend so that we are going to have this session. It will be a very, very brief session where we will deep dive into more of academic mentorship. We know the do's and the don'ts and what we are not supposed to be doing and what is expected of us that pertains to academic excellence. So this is Teacher Asaf, the teacher who is determined and passionate about turning confusion into clarity, helping learners from weakness to strength. Until your weakness turns into strength, I will not rest. So this is what I've been called for. This is my passion, to turn confusion into clarity. I can see more and more are joining because we will be having a mind-blowing discussion here and you are free to participate. And for safety purposes, yes, Njeri Njogona, I can see you are in. I understand that a majority of you are following me in YouTube. Let us maintain the YouTube meeting and leave behind the Zoom one because you cannot be able to live stream from two different platforms at the same time. So in this particular moment, we are going to have a very, very good session. I want you to feel that you are in the right place. And this is an open-ended meeting. It is not a closed format meeting where I expect not just the learners we have been in class, but even candidates across the board and across the 47 counties of this country, and also private students, Form 3s, Form 4s, and also the grade 10. So what we are going to be learning on today is more on content mastery and the proven study techniques that have not just been used now, but they have been applied back then and they have been proven to be working. We observe and do a self-test on ourselves on what we have been doing wrongly so that we can be able to do the right thing. So I'll be starting in I want at least we have a maximum number of viewers so that we can start off. I hope the rest will join us as time goes by. So how many of you study a lot, but you still don't get the grades you want? It's a question It's a groundbreaking question that I'm asking. How many of you do study a lot? Sincerely speaking, from the bottom of your heart, you spend more time studying, but at the end of it all, what you end up getting is not what you deserve. That is what I want us to check out on today. And for us to check that one out, we must do a self-test on the wrong strategies that we have been deploying during our day-to-day learning processes, and know what we have been doing wrong and what we are expected to be doing. In this particular moment, we are going to have this moment to streamline our academic work, to streamline on what we do wrong, so that we can be able to do the right thing. And in this particular moment, I want us to first ask ourselves, what have we been doing wrong, so that we can now ask ourselves, what should we do right? I've started by asking a question. You have been studying a lot. You have been brainstorming on a lot of information, internalizing a lot of resources, reading books, writing notes, summarizing notes, but at the end of it all, you are not getting you are not getting what you are expecting. You are not performing to your expectation. What is the problem? The problem is not you in person. The problem might not even be your mind or maybe your intellectual ability, but the problem might be the wrong strategies that you are using, or the wrong strategies that you have deployed when it pertains to your academic performance. Some of the wrong strategies, and probably you can attest to the fact about this, is a majority of you students, you cram instead of understanding. So most of us students do cram information instead of understanding. By talking of cramming, if I may break it down into words that we can be able to understand, a majority of us read or do studies when the exam is very, very close, to a point that you study hours closer to approaching the examination. So what happens is that that information does not settle in your long-term memory. Instead, it settles in your short-term memory. So one of the problems that a majority of us learners are having is cramming. We are cramming a lot of information. I want first to us to check out on some of the wrong strategies that we have been using, so that we will now work out on the right strategies that we are supposed to be using. The second one is time management. Many of us are wasting our time. We are not able to manage our time clearly. We are not able to manage our time well. We juggle through so many activities alongside studying, which take up our time. And in this moment, we are also going to learn on how to manage time. And by specifically saying how to manage time, I'm saying about what are we going to do at specific time, and I believe things are going to work out. Another wrong strategy that we have been deploying is lack of proper knowledge on how exam is assessed, or what we call the exam techniques. So when we talk about the exam apart from being assessed, it also tests on strategies and how prepared you are. So majority of us learners do not know the techniques in which the exam is set, and we are not taught on the techniques in which we are supposed to approach the exam. So we study the wrong things, or we study the right things using the wrong methodologies, and at the end of it all, we find ourselves not being able to internalize whatever we have been taught. Something else that we are doing so wrongly is the presence of gaps. We have so many gaps when it comes to knowledge, and I believe that we have been having classes with a majority of you concerning knowledge gaps, and that is something we are still working on. So knowledge gaps is one another problem that we are having as learners, or learners you are having, that is pertaining to poor in performance. You are very poor in performance because you have knowledge gaps. You are in Form 4, but there is some work in Form 1 that you never completed. There is some work in Form 2 you never completed. There is pending work in Form 3 that was never covered. So you find yourself, you are now in Form 4, and you are now in Form 4. Yes, Habib Aden, what if I procrastinate and don't know how to balance my subjects? I'm going to respond to that in this session. Stay tuned in this session because we are going to learn about procrastination. So I was speaking about the knowledge gap. So you find yourself, you are now in Form 4, and right now, since you are in Form 4, there are some areas you are not good in that was covered in Form 1, in Form 2, and in Form 3. And you know, in everything, foundation is very, very important. So another long strategy you have been using is you have been trying to juggle through resources without having some information that you missed back in the previous classes. By learning on that, and by saying that, I can see you are still getting in. Naona bado tunaingia. Jenny Jogona, Esther, Habiba Eden, I can see we are still getting in class. We are still getting in. And concerning knowledge gaps, we have said that is the problem that a majority of our students are also having. The next one is effective revision strategies. We do not have a clear strategy on how to do our revision. And in this session, I'm going to guide you on how to effectively revise for your exams, and not just for your exams, but for some, a majority of the subjects. How do you go through revision? How can you revise as a smart student and maximize your results at the end of the year? Remember, the Form 4's time is not on our side. You have less than 6 months to prepare for your KCSE examination, and if you will deploy these techniques, you will end up passing very well in your national examination. So I want you to note this. These are our objectives, or what you are supposed to have learned by the end of this session. I believe this session is not just there in vain. I'm not appearing on this camera to just waste time. I'm here with a purpose, so that you are going to know what you do wrong, so that you can start doing it right. As a teacher, I've gone through the process. I've gone through the system. I understand what students do wrong. I understand where students go wrong and what they should do right, so that they may pass in their examination. So kindly pay attention to what I'm sharing to you. This is a very, very brief session that I'm going to have with you to share the right strategies you need to use, the proven techniques that you're supposed to be using, so that you can pass your examination. And pertaining passing examination, we will start number one with what we call content retention. How can you be able to retain content in your head? A majority of us learners, we are having a problem with retaining content in the mind. Huwa tunasema nimesoma lakini nilisahau, niliona paper ya exam, kila kitu ika evaporate. Ndio sababu niko hapa, so that I'm going to guide you on how to retain the information in your long term memory. So in this session, the objectives for this session, or what you need to take home, is number one, you need to learn about practical study strategies that you can use to pass. That is something that you are going to learn today. The next objective that you are going to learn is on how to improve exam performance. How can I be able to improve exam performance? Number three is building confidence and discipline. At the end of this session, you will have to learn, number one, learning practical study strategies. Number two is improving your exam performance. And number three is building confidence and discipline. To add up on all this, you also need to understand on why a majority of us students struggle. So before we go for we proceed, if it is your first time that you are arriving in my YouTube channel, ensure you click the subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, so that kila kitu ambacho tutasoma hapa utaweza kufuata baadaye na utaweza kuelewa. Remember, I always upload and live stream I always teach, upload videos, and also do live streaming sessions here on my YouTube channel. So I want you to be very, very attentive on what we are going to be learning. I've said that those are the three things that you need to take home. Let me check out how many are in our meeting, because I believe that clarity breaks all limit. I can see you are still getting in. So let's continue. Let us continue. Okay, as we have said, the first thing we need to understand is we must understand why we struggle And why is it so hard for us to pass examination? Why is it so hard for you as a student to understand the concepts that you are learning? Why is it so difficult for you to transfer the information from your brain to the text or to a booklet? Why is it so hard to do that? Number one reason why it is hard. Remember, learning is all about what we call intrinsic motivation, the motivation which comes from in. For you to accept the fact that you need to learn and pass, you must be intrinsically motivated. It must come from a point of consciousness that I'm personally motivated to do this thing. I'm personally motivated to excel academic wise. It is not something that comes from outward, from what we call the outward factors or the outward environment. It should come from within self to without. So before your parents pressure you on what to do, before your parents pressure you on doing your personal studies, you need to have it as a personal motivation that I am doing this for my own good. I am doing this to transform my life. I will start with number one. One of the struggles that learners we are going through, we've said about, is cramming. And by talking of cramming, there is something I want us to understand about cramming and understanding. Cramming is juggling through or going through books, reading aloud when the time of exam is approaching, when you are close to approaching the exam. What happens with cramming, or the negative impacts of cramming, is that when you fill your brain with a lot of information within a short span of time, that information is not retained. It is stored in what we call the STM, or the short-term memory. So what happens is that when that information is stored in the short-term memory, you end up finding yourself, you will forget when you want to execute that information on your paper. So majorly, our students are used to cramming. A majority of you learners are used to cramming. But if you can exercise reading information or studying when the exam is not near, you spend more time studying. And by saying more time, I mean you are not bombarding yourself with a lot of information at time within a short within a long span of time. What you are doing is that unasoma in breaks. You are studying in breaks, not because there is an exam approaching. Even if the goal is the exam, you start studying earlier. As right now, you are now in the April holiday. Coming May, you will be opening schools and you will be sitting for your mock exams coming August. So what happens is that immediately from May, you need to plan your study schedule well, so that you will start studying slowly by slowly. As you read and read and read, you will find that your brain tends to take that information. It crafts that information and stores it from the short-term memory to the long-term memory. And when this information is transformed into the long-term memory, what you will realize is that you will be able to remember it during the exam. Remember, the opposite of cramming is understanding. The only way you can overcome cramming is through understanding. And how do you understand? You read before, not before the exam. You take time reading before approaching the exam, so that when you study, that information is transferred into the long-term memory. And when you take that information that you have read and try to interpret it in your own words, by the use of your own words, you can be able to interpret and not interfere with the meaning. How do you know that you have understood? If you read a certain concept, try interpreting that concept in your own words. And if you cannot be able to interpret that concept in your own words, know that you have not yet understood that concept. But if you can be able to interpret that concept with your own words, know that you have been able to understand that concept. So number one, we've said stop cramming and start understanding. Stop cramming and start understanding. Why? Because cramming dwells in short-term memory, but understanding is transferred to the long-term memories. Now, another negative impact of cramming is that you are not able to respond to application questions. When we talk of application questions, exam not only test facts, exams also test applications. How well as a student can you be able to apply a particular concept? So if you crammed, for example, allow me to use mathematics as a reference. If you crammed the formula of finding the area of a triangle, a half base times height, maybe that is what you are having, a half base times height. That is the formula. And in that formula, for determining the area of a triangle, if the triangle is just drawn and you are told to find the area of a triangle, I hope you can understand what I'm saying. You can't be able to do it. But if that question is phrased in a more applicational way, that for example, teacher Asaf owns a triangular farm whose base length is 20 meters and the perpendicular height is 100 meters. Calculate the area of teacher Asaf farm in hectares. If that question is phrased in an applicational way, you will not be able to understand if your zero was just cramming. But if you understand something, you are going to be able to apply that in your examinations. So, the next thing we are going to mention about is how to understand better. How do we understand better? So we have mentioned on cramming, kukram, bookworming. You take books, you read very fast, but you are reading because the exam is tomorrow. That is what you are used to doing. And at the end of it all, you end up failing your exams. We have said the best is to understand. How do you understand? You take time, you study. When you study, when the exam is not close, that information will be retained in your long-term memory. Now I want us to learn on how to understand better. How do we understand better? How do we understand better? Number one way to understand better is to ask why and how, not what. The best way, or not the best way, one of the ways to understand better is to ask why, how, and not what. Let me interpret it so that you can understand. If you ask why questions, if you ask yourself how questions, and avoid asking yourself what, you are going to invoke the understanding part of the brain that is going to grasp that information and store it in the long-term memory. For instance, generally, we define matter in chemistry, we define matter as anything that has mass and occupies space. So, if I ask you what is matter, you will say matter is anything that has mass and occupies space. That generally I can call it cramming. You may not have understood what that concept is. But if I ask you, how can you describe matter? How can you describe matter? How can you describe matter? If it is my response, I would say, I would describe matter as anything that has mass. What is mass? Mass is the quantity of matter and occupies space. So that will be a response from the ground of understanding, not cramming. So if you ask yourself why is this fact said to be this? Why is the area of triangle said to be a half base times height? Why not just the base times height? You will be able to understand because you will evoke in your mind, you will evoke your brain to stand in a position of grasping whatever you are reasoning about. Number two, another way you can be able to understand better is explaining in your own words. Many times as students, we find ourselves explaining concepts based on whatever the book has provided. We have not grown to understand, to read, understand, and explain that concept in your own words. For example, if you understand a concept, let me use maybe chemistry as an example also. If you understand a concept like, which is the best example to use in reference to chemistry? Good. Fractional distillation of liquefied air. If we understand a concept like fractional distillation of liquefied air, and I've told you, briefly describe how oxygen gas can be extracted through fractional distillation of liquid air. I'm not expecting you to master the steps as the book dictates, but I want you to, from your own words, interpret how you will reach to collecting oxygen from liquid air. For instance, if I am to respond to that question, I'll say that oxygen is collected from liquid air through a process called fractional distillation of liquefied air. The process begins when air is channeled through the intake pump. Water is removed as air is cooled below a temperature of -25 degrees Celsius. The next step is the air is passed through a chamber with sodium hydroxide to remove carbon 4 oxide. Then the next level is air is channeled to the fractional distillation chamber, where the temperature and pressure the temperature increases to 200 atmospheres, and the pressure increases to 200 atmosphere. The temperature decreases to -200 atmosphere until air is collected as liquid. Then when the temperature starts to rise, oxygen is distilled off, nitrogen is distilled off, and argon is distilled off at their respective temperatures. If you check out the words that I have used, I have not used those words exactly as they are in the book. I have used my own words to explain that. From the temperature of -200 degrees Celsius, the temperature begins to rise, and at -196 degrees Celsius, nitrogen gas distills off fast. At -186 degrees Celsius, argon is distilled off fast. At -183 degrees Celsius, oxygen gas is distilled off last, just by the use of my own words. So I read the book, I used my own words to interpret what I understand, and then I paraphrase my understanding using my own words. That is one way you can build understanding. Number 3, another way you can be able to understand better is teach someone else. Teach someone else. Teach someone else. This is very, very compelling. Very, very compelling. Students, you need to teach someone else. You need to teach someone else. You need to teach someone else. I think this is very, very provocative. You need to teach someone else. Listen, Stephen Bartlett once said, there is an author by the name Stephen Bartlett. He has authored a book by the name The Diary of a CEO. This is what he said. He said, if you want to know something, read. If you want to understand something, write. If you want to master something, create an obligation to teach it. If you want to know something, read. If you want to understand, write. If you want to master, underline the word master, create an obligation to teach it. Create an obligation to teach it. So a majority of us, what we do is that we study and we learn by our own selves, but we do not try, or we do not do the teach someone technique. Find another student, find another deskmate, or find your deskmate and try to explain that concept you have understood to them. You will find that at the point of explaining that concept to them, you will stand in a better position to understand more. You will stand in a better position to understand more. If you want to master something, create an obligation to teach it. If you don't teach that concept, you cannot understand it. I remember the reason why I stood out to be very, very good in academics when I was a student is because since I was in Form 1, I was a peer teacher of biology, I was a peer teacher of chemistry, peer teacher of mathematics, I also used to peer teach geography, I also used to peer teach agriculture. 5 subjects. And you can check out my records. I schooled in Kenyogori High School. For those who know Kenyogori High School, you can check out my record from that school, probably if you doubt. But I'm telling you, I used to peer teach when I was still a student. And becoming a peer teacher helped me understand a lot of information. I was able to master a lot, and that is why I have never forgotten everything that I did in school. Even this maths and chemistry that I'm teaching you today, a lot of it is not a product of my degree, what I pursued in the university, my Bachelor's of Education Science degree. A lot of this is a product of what I learned in school. Ever since I learned this topic in high school, I have never forgotten them. Why? Because I learned from the ground of teaching. The more I taught people, the more I assisted many students, the more I understood. So I'm talking to you now that the best way and another very, very effective way that you can be able to understand better is use the teach someone technique. Go and teach that concept you have learned and understood to your deskmate. Stand on the board when the teacher has not yet arrived in class. Take that marker pen and tell them, I'm going to teach you on how to solve vectors. And you will find that by the time you are finishing to teach them, you will be passing and you will be doing very, very well. Yes? We are still moving. Good. There is someone who asked about procrastination. That is where now we are. Time management problems. I want to address something on time management problems. Procrastination. One wise man said that procrastination is the thief of time. Procrastination is keeping on postponing something. I will do this later. I will do this later. I will do this later. Until you have not been decisive enough on when you are going to do it. You keep on saying, I will do this tomorrow. When tomorrow comes, you are not going to do it. Let me tell you something. Time is not on your side. And if you keep on procrastinating, things are not going to work out well for you. Why do we find ourselves procrastinating? Number one, we find ourselves procrastinating because we lack self-motivation. So for the person who asked about procrastination, number one is lack of self-motivation. Personally, you are not intrinsically motivated on what you are doing. You are not conscious on what you are doing. Number two is lacking a proper study schedule. You are not having a proper study schedule, a proper working timetable that is going to guide you to learn effectively and manage your time properly. So number one, be intrinsically motivated, that you are not studying because you have been taken to school to study, but it is your self-responsibility to study and make your life better. Number one. Number two, ensure that you have a strictly working timetable. By the time you are creating that timetable, let it have fixed schedules for learning, fixed schedules for breaks, because you cannot just learn without having breaks. You will have what we call burnouts. You must have the right time to sleep, to rest, sorry. You must also ensure that you are having breaks during your study sessions so that you can be able to refreshen up. And also, that is on time management. You lack a clear plan, you are procrastinating. And another thing that is also wasting your time is too much time on one subject. Too much time on one subject. We are in an era whereby most of us students, there is that subject unapenda sana. Kuna hiyo subject unapenda sana. Kuna hiyo maths unapenda. Kuna hiyo chemistry unapenda. Kuna hiyo English unapenda. Lakini upendi maths. So you can spend 5 hours ukisoma English, but huwezi spend time mingi ukisoma maths. If you are having a problem in things to do with creating your personal timetable, contact me at +2547420900825. I'm going to guide you on how to create an effective working timetable. A working timetable is not just a normal timetable. It's a timetable that addresses on your weakness, because a majority of you, the timetables that you are using, they only have the areas of strength where you revise on. They do not have areas of weakness where you are revising on. In fact, you should know that when you are doing your personal studies, you should spend more time in studying what you are not understanding than studying what you are understanding. So I want you to take that into consideration. Matters to do with procrastination comes because you don't have a fixed working schedule, and that working schedule, the timetable entails that thing. So if you are having a problem with having a working timetable, I'm going to guide you in creating one. So about balancing your subjects, I'll get to that. I know in this session we cannot be able to exhaust everything that I wanted us to do, but I believe that with time I'll keep on posting more. You can like the live. I can see we only have 4 people in. We have 4 people who are in. So when you spend too much time on one subject, you will find that there are some subjects you are not going to study, and that is what leads to not balancing your subjects. You find you get a B in business, a B in CRE, an E in maths. But if we check your study timetable, wewe unasomanga 7 hours business, 0 hours mathematics, that cannot work. If you can reciprocate that time and give mathematics more time than business, you will pass. By the way, when I was a student like you, let me tell you something. I used to be very, very poor in maths and chem. Hata sijuangi. It's by God's grace that whatever I used to be poor in is what I'm teaching today. I'm now a mathematics chemistry teacher. But let me tell you something. In Form 1, in Form 2, I was very, very poor in mathematics and in chemistry. Na sikuwa nazisoma. I used to study biology. I used to study geography. I used to study agriculture because I was not even that good in languages. But in Form 3, wakati niliamua, enough is enough, I have to do something. Ile time mingi nilikuwa napea biology, I used to get an A in bio, Form 1, Form 2. Iyo time nilikuwa napea bio, niliipea math. And shockingly, bado biology nilipata A, na math nikapata B+. And that is how I was able to balance my subjects. So, if you think that iyo subject huu unapita sana, ndio huu inafanya upite, no, it is not the one that makes you pass. In fact, if you can pass the subject you fail most, you are going to pass than when you are failing that subject you are failing. Another distraction on time management, another problem in time management is distractions, phones, and social media. Most of you learners are in social media. You spend so much of your time in social media, Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp, chatting until late night. You are not sleeping well, haulali vizuri, haukui na muda mzuri wako wa kupumzika. Your body is always in fatigue, burnouts every day. Umeamka asubuhi hutaki kuamka juu ulilala saa 8. You need to quit that thing on social media. You need to quit social media and focus on learning. If the only way you can be using social media is only by learning. For instance, right now, those students who are currently in this live session or this live streaming program, you are using your smartphone, but you are using it to add value to your life. So, number 1 is that don't use social media longly. Don't let social media absorb you when it is time to study. Ensure you keep yourself off during your personal studies. Ensure you keep off and away from your device, from your electronic device, so that you can have an time to study. Another one is, I want us to mention something on time management strategies. How can you come up with a time management strategy, or how can you be able to manage your time? How can you be able to manage your time? Number 1, create a realistic timetable. Create a realistic timetable. By saying a realistic timetable, create a timetable that you yourself you can be able to follow. Create timetable ati utaamka kusoma saa 7. That cannot work. You will have burnouts. Your body will crash. I remember there was a time in high school, we used to school with some students who used to wake up at 1 p.m., 1 a.m. in the morning, 1 a.m. You will burn out, tafadhali. Create a realistic timetable that fits your schedule. When you create this realistic timetable, ensure the landmark topic, the landmark subjects, landmark are those subjects that you perform poorly. You have given them more than enough time. compared to those that you are passing. Let this realistic timetable have time to switch from one subject to another, and let it be something that you can be able to learn. Let it be something that you can be able to follow without pressure. Number 2, study 2 to 3 subjects daily. You cannot study all the 8 subjects in one day. Ensure you study 2 to 3 subjects daily. And in these subjects, at least 1 hour is enough for you to conduct a study of one subject. And this 1 hour, let it not just be continuous. At least have 50 minutes of studying, 50 minutes of brainstorming, and 10 minutes of a break. A break is very, very important. When you have time to break, when you study something and break, your mind tends to refresh. If maybe you are doing some body workouts, stretches, we have been having Jenny Jogona on board guiding us in stretches. So if you are having body workouts in that 10-minute break, it is going to help your mind refresh. But if you do a 2-hour study without having a break, you are going to crash your brain. Another one is prioritize on weak subjects. Prioritize on weak subjects. Those weak subjects that you are not, the subjects you are not doing well, the weak subjects that you have, prioritize on them. When I realized I was doing bad in maths, I was doing bad in chemistry, what I did is that I re-edited my timetable and ensured that a majority of an 80% of my time I gave attention to my weak areas. I studied chemistry and I studied mathematics, and that is how I improved. But if you stick to your CRE, to your business, and you are giving maths 20 minutes, then when you sit down to do maths, you find yourself, you are burning out in less than 10 minutes, then you switch back to your favorite subject. It is not going to work well for you. You need to prioritize weak subjects over strong subjects. I want us to discuss on exam techniques. And before we discuss on exam techniques, let me check how many are here. And on bado tunakuja. Ask a question. Uliza swali. If you have a question, drop your question on the comment section tafadhali. Drop your question on the comment section. 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 We are now about to handle, sahi nataka to handle exam techniques. Sahi nimesema we are not dealing with numbers or facts. Sahi kwanza tuna deal na what can we do to improve our performances. I have some slides here. I'm going to share these slides with you after we are done with the session so that you can go through them and you can be able to respond to them and probably change your habits. Kuna mtu hapa na swali? If you don't have a question, then we will proceed to the next thing that I want us to discuss. I want us to discuss on exam techniques. You have now approached exam. You have now approached the exam and sitting on the locker waiting for the exam. What are the techniques that you are supposed to use to maneuver through that exam? Number 1, read instructions carefully. Many are the times that when students get the questions, unaonanga ni kama utasahau. Kwanza kale ka concept umesoma ukikaribia kuingia mtihani, huna fungua mbio uone ama kako kwa mtihani. But that is not the case. When you get the paper, read instructions carefully. Ukisoma instructions, you will be able to do well. By the way, many students don't pass because they are bright. They pass because they are good in following instructions. Mimi nilikuwa nafuata instructions. I was very good in following instructions. In many exams, I didn't used to pass because I was very, very perfect. But it is because I used to be very good in following instructions. Wacha kuambiwa pale mathematics. Section 1, answer all questions. Section 2, answer any 5 questions. Na wewe unaenda section 2 unajibu maswali 8 questions. you end up failing. Na si kusema utaanguka. Tafadhali follow instructions, read instructions carefully. Questions za hesabu sana sana mnapatanga mwambua give your answer to 2 decimal places. Give your answer to 4 significant figures. Write the equation of line in form of y equals mx plus c. Na wewe unaandika in form of ax plus y equals plus by equals to c. Those are the simple instructions zenye zinafanyanga tuanguke na zinafanya tukose kupita. So tafadhali read instructions carefully. Number 2, start with easy questions. Hii ni makosa ingine huwa tunafanya. Kuanza na maswali ngumu. Start with the easy questions. So another exam technique you need to deploy is start with easy questions. Why are you recommended to start with easy questions? To build motivation. When you know something, ukijua unajua kitu ni rahisi sana kuifanya, huwa ina build motivation yako. So ukifanya yale maswali mepesi, utaweza kufanya yale maswali magumu. Lakini ukienda uanze na yale maswali magumu, utavunjika moyo na utashindwa kufanya hata yale mepesi. But if you can choose those questions that I confidence ya kuenda kufanya hayo maswali mengine yamebeba alama 60. Kwa hivyo mimi ningekuambia mwanafunzi, instead of starting with even not just starting from question 1 to the last, check out on the easy questions that you can to do. Ukienda hapo kwanza upatane na swali la integers -2 plus -3 into brackets, solve that. Ukipatana na swali la indices, fanya swali ka equation of line, fanya hako. Start with the questions that you know are easy to you. After you now build motivation and confidence, you will be able to approach those difficult questions. Another one is manage your time well. Don't spend so much time on one question. Ukigawanya, for example, mathematics, the whole paper takes 2.5 hours. 2.5 hours, tugawanye hayo masaa mara mbili. 2.5 hours tukigawanya mara mbili itakuwa 1 hour 25 minutes each. No. 1 hour 15 minutes each. So tuseme section 1 ni 1 hour 15 minutes, section 2 ni 1 hour 15 minutes. In section 1, that 1 hour 15 minutes, kuna 16 questions to do. Section 1 has 16 questions. So in those 16 questions, if you take 1 hour 15 minutes, that is equivalent to 75 minutes. If you take 75, divide by 16, 75 divided by 16, 75 divided by 16. Okay, tumesema 2 hours 30 minutes. Hata tuachane na zile 30, tuchukue 2 hours. Juu zile 30 ni muhimu sana za kufanya nini? To follow up. You check your work before submitting. Tuchukue 2 hours. 2 hours divided by 2 is 1 hour, 1 hour. 1 hour section 1, 1 hour section 2. So take 60 minutes, divide by 16 questions. You will find that one question will take you approximately 3.4 minutes. 3 minutes and a half. 3.5 minutes each question. So in section 1, don't take more than 3.5 minutes to do one question. In section 2, you are supposed to do 5 questions in 1 hour. 1 hour is equivalent to 60 minutes. So 60 divided by 5, it is equal to 12 minutes. So in section 2, ensure that every question will not take a maximum of, will not take more than 12 minutes. If you divide your work very well, in 2 hours, you ought to have been done by doing your work. The last 30 minutes, you are now going through your work. Where have I made a mistake? Where have I made what we call the numerical errors? The positive and negative, where I was supposed to put a negative na eka positive. That is very, very important. For the last 30 minutes, unaanza kupitia kazi yako. Manage your time well. Show all working, especially in mathematics. Apart from the answer, you need the method mark. So you need that method mark. Hauhitaji tu answer mark. So muachange kujidanganya sana sana na mambo ati ninataka tu answer. No, method is very, very important also. What are some of the common mistakes that you do during the exams? The common mistakes ambazo tunafanyanga kwa mtihani, number 1 is rushing through question. When you read a question, una rush into conclusion and start answering a question without reading the questions very well. So stop rushing through questions. Take time, read, reread, and reread if there is something like that in grammar, so that you may understand your questions very well. Number 2, another exam mistake that you do is leaving blanks. There is no awarding of marks in a blank space. Ensure that you write something. Let me not say write something, because you may end up writing nonsense on your exam paper. When I'm saying don't leave blanks, I mean have something in mind. You may not have the right answer, but you have the correct method. You have the correct formula. Write that formula, substitute your values in those formulas, and write something that will award you marks. Even if you will miss the answer mark, you will not miss the working mark. Another one is poor handwriting. Poor handwriting. Many students have a very, very bad handwriting, and this is a very big discouragement to teachers. Because when you try to read something that you cannot be able to see, it becomes also discouraging that you cannot read, you just end up cancelling everything. Remember the examiners that mark KCSE, they mark even at night, and they are very, very exhausted. When they are marking those scripts, they need to see clear points, they need to see articulation of words. So if you are having a very, very poor handwriting, it is high time you start working on your handwriting so that you will have a very, very good handwriting that will be very, very appealing to the examiner. Let the examiner, after seeing your paper, anasema this student has written very, very well. This student knows what he or she was doing. The last part of not the common mistakes is not reviewing answers. You don't go through your answers. What did you write? Unamalizanga unalala, unadoze, unamaliza unatuna, unasema mimi nimemaliza exam, but that is not the case. What should you do? You should always review your answers. Many are the times that we write answers and end up being wrong, but if you write answers and go through your answers, that is why nakwambia kama ni mathematics take 2 hours, ensure that pale mwisho kuna zile 30 minutes unatumia kureview answers zako, unatumia kureview kazi yako, ili mahali ulifanya any error you will have time to correct. But if you don't manage your time well, you will find out that you will not have time to review your answers and you will end up failing. Knowledge gaps. I want us to learn on knowledge gaps. Knowledge gaps huwa zinatokana na nini? How is it that uko form 4 na utapata ulisahau moles? By the way, uko form 4 na ulisahau moles. What happened? Can you please explain how they grade subjects in KCSE? Haya, tunakuja hapo. Agwet. Let me respond to what you have just asked. How do they grade subjects in KCSE? I will start with maths. Allow me to start with mathematics. I will start with maths. Maths has 2 papers. Maths has paper 1 and paper 2. Both papers, each papers is equivalent to 100 marks. So, grading ya mathematics inakuanga hivi. From 70 and above, that is an A. An A starts from 70 to 100. From 65 to 69 is an A minus. From 60 to 64 is a B plus. From 55 to 59 is a B plain. Ukishuka hivyo. 50 to 54 a B minus. Going down like that. But this is not fixed. The grading is not always fixed. It depends with how the exam is. Kuna wakati exam inaweza kuja ikiwa ngumu and they will lower the grading system. So it is not always constant. It is not always constant. It keeps on changing. So that is for mathematics. For different subjects have different grading systems. So as you have said, how do they grade subjects? Number 1, mathematics have given you how they grade it. Number 2, chemistry. The A for chemistry starts from 65% and above. Msishtuke 65. Kwa inaanza 65 and above. So 65 and above is an A. Na zikishuka na 5 each, hiyo grade inashuka. But listen, mathematics tumesema iko na papers mbili. Mathematics has paper 1 and it has paper 2. Paper 1 in maths, I said it majorly assesses form 1 work and form 2 work. And when we talk of form 1 and form 2 work, we mean the topics that are in form 1 and form 2 are commonly assessed in paper 1. For those we have been in class together, we have been working out on paper 1. Something else that you need to know, in Form 3, there is a topic that is assessed in Paper 1. Write these topics down. Number 1, we have matrices. In Form 3, it is assessed in Paper 1. Then in Form 4, we have 2 topics that are assessed in Paper 1. We have differentiation and we have area approximation. So, in Paper 1, we have Form 1, Form 2, area approximation and differentiation na matrices. Paper 2 mathematics, we have Form 3 work except matrices, and we have Form 4 work except differentiation and area approximation. I've explained on mathematics. Chemistry, an A starts from 65. In chemistry, we have Paper 1, Paper 2, and Paper 3. Paper 1 and Paper 2 are theory papers, and Paper 3 is a practical exam. In Paper 1 and in Paper 2, chemistry hainanga ati kazi ya Form 1, Form 2 ndio inakuja Paper 1 or Paper 2. No. What happens with Paper 1, it is always out of 80 marks. Cumulatively, it carries 80 marks. It goes for 2 hours. And chemistry paper, you find that Paper 1, it is those short structured questions that need short structured answers. Ni maswali mafupi ambayo yanahitaji majibu ambayo si detailed. But when we talk of Paper 2, you find that Paper 2 we have comprehensive questions. Like you will find a question in structure of an atom and the periodic table. That is a comprehensive question. So they will ask a question in which you need to have more details on that topic so that you can be able to respond to that question. Paper 3 practical, the topics that are assessed in the practicals, practical is equal to 40 marks, and those 40 marks is equal to 40%. That is why it is always very, very important to understand the practical very well, kwa sababu huwa inakupatia marks out of 40. The theory mbili add up to 60, but the practical is 40% by itself. So what happens is that practicals, hizi ni topics zenye huwa zinaasesiwa kwa practical. Number 1 is mole. Mole. M-O-L-E. Mole in Form 3. Na mole ni nini huwa inaasesiwa kwa mole? It is volumetric analysis and titrations. How many types of titrations do we have? We have the direct titration, the back titration, and the dots titration. Those are the 3 titrations that are in the mole that are assessed in the practical. Number 2, another topic that is assessed in the practicals is acid, bases, and salts. Acid, bases, and salts in Form 4. That topic is the one that carries solubility. So those are 2 topics. Number 3, we have energy changes in physical and chemical processes. That is in Form 4. Energy changes in physical and chemical processes. Energy changes in physical and chemical processes. Number 4, we have rate of reaction and reversible reaction. 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 Number 5, we have organic chemistry. We have organic chemistry. We have organic chemistry. Those are the topics that are assessed in the practical. So if you can be able to prepare very well for chemistry, I guarantee you are going to pass very, very, very well. The only thing you cannot predict in chemistry, especially Paper 1, is whether a question will come from Form 1 or Form 2. That you cannot be able to predict. You can find that the first question, number 1, which is equal maybe to 2 marks, is coming from Form 4. But one thing about chemistry is that if you have studied well, Form 1 work to Form 3 work, you stand a chance to do very well in chemistry. Even if you have not done Form 4 work and you have done very, very well, you have revised very well, you have studied very well, Form 1, Form 2, and Form 3 work, you can pass. I remember when I was in Form 4, that year I was in Form 4, when I enrolled in Form 4, if I did the chemistry that was done in the previous year, I would have scored an A without having done the Form 4 work. So what am I trying to say? With Form 1, Form 2, and Form 3 work, you stand a chance of getting a B+ and above in chemistry, even without the Form 4 work. Even without the Form 4 work. Nimeongea kuhusu maths na chemistry. Esther Aguet, I hope I have responded to that question. But nitaendelea kuelezea hizo zingine, what happens venye huwa zinaulizwa, maswali yanatokanga wapi. So tumeongea kuhusu knowledge gaps leads to weak performance. Kuna vitu ulisahau, it leads to weak performance. Hiyo ingine ni how can you be able to close gaps. Number one is identifying weak topics. Like what we did, we identified weak topics. After we identified weak topics, we went back to basics. Number two, went back to basics. Go back to basics. We started on the basics. The basics being the Form 1 work. Number three, use teachers and online resources. So you use teachers. You have teachers in school. And you can also use online resources. Just as now you are using me as an online resource. You are using YouTube as an online resource. And another one is practice consistently. Go through those basics and start revising and practicing consistently. And by doing that, you'll be able to close all the gaps. For example, for one topics, we have introduction to chemistry, simple classification of substances. We have acid, bases, and indicators. We have air and combustion. We have water and hydrogen. If you lost your track back in Form 1, if you can go through Form 1 work, create some reading and understanding, you'll find yourself that you'll be able to understand Form 2 work. So you'll close a gap there. Another thing to learn on is effective revision. Effective revision. How can you revise effectively? Effective revision. How can you revise effectively? Aguet, kuna subject ingine unataka nitaje kuhusu grading? Even before we discuss on grading, we can also mention something on the topics zenye huwa zinafanya nini. Like naweza wachani niwaibie siri moja ya English and literature. English and literature. If you want to pass well in English and literature, sikiliza hapa. Si kupita. Okay. Wacha nisiseme si kupita. In English, I had a B minus. I had a B minus in English. Na nilikuwa naanguka in Form 1, Form 2, Form 3, nilikuwa naanguka napata English E. But Form 4 Term 1 nilitoka E nikapata B minus. After kufika Form 4 ndivyo nilijua kumbe English inakuwa rahisi hivyo. Inakuwa rahisi. So because after kuingia Form 4 ndivyo tulianza kufanya full papers. So what happened is that nikakuja kujua paper 1 ya English iko na number 1 functional writing. Functional writing ni 20 marks. 20 marks kuna long writings na kuna short writings. So if you can revise very well on functional writing, utaishi kupata 15 marks and above. Na hiyo sana sana si ati hata ukue na language, ni format. Ukue na format, then have your language and give your story very well. You will be able to get 20 marks. Part 2 is close test, 10 marks, and part 3 is what we call the oral skills, 30 marks. Paper 1 in English, if I'm not mistaken, and if I'm mistaken I stand to be corrected, it is 60 marks. So ukijua paper 1 nikisomea English paper 1 nasomea functional skills, close test and oral skills, nimepita. Hivyo ndivyo nilianza kupita. Nikatoka E to B minus direct. Usishindwe nilitoka hivyo aje. Ni juu ya kuwork smart. Ukijua kuwork smart, hautahitaji kutumia effort, utakuwa unatumia your smartness to pass. Paper 2 nikajua number 1 ni comprehension. Na comprehension ni 20 marks. Na hiyo majibu ya comprehension iko hapo ndani. So ikiwa hapo ndani nikasema sitawaipata below 15. Ya pili nikajua ni heads up. We call it literary appreciation. So hizo ni zile setbook mnasoma. Sisi during our time kuna zile setbook tulisoma, nyinyi kuna zenye mnasoma. So hiyo nikajua ni 25 marks, majibu yako hapo ndani. Themes, character and characterization and stylistic devices. Hizo vitu unazijua vizuri, 25 marks. Number 3, I learned on poetry or oral narrative which goes for 20 marks. Hiyo nayo nikahakikisha I know the stylistic devices that are used. Hizo mnasemanga akina irony, sarcasm, sarcasm, zinakuwa gani? Irony, sarcasm, repetition, oxymorons, all those types of stylistic devices, onomatopoeia all those uhakikisho unazijua, 20 marks. Tena grammar 15 marks. Kwanza wakati nilijua Kiingereza ati without grammar I can pass, 15 marks only in grammar. Grammar si kama Kiswahili. Kiswahili sarufi na matumizi ya lugha ni 40 marks paper 2. Grammar ni 15 marks. So without grammar, na unisikilize vizuri, without grammar you can pass in English. With literature, with oral literature, with written literature, you can be able to pass very well. Nagesh, hai tu. Shafizuru, mwalimu, emu fanya linear motion. Oi, linear motion inaleta shida. Linear motion tutaifanya tu sijali. Tutaifanya tu. Leo hatufanye hesabu, leo tunasema shida zetu ni gani. Hiyo ni English paper 2. Paper 3 inakuanga imaginative composition moja ya 20 marks. Na hapo pengine ni set book mbili, unaandika SMB 60 marks. Unapita. Who is this calling? Just a minute, I cancel this call. Sorry, kuna mtu alikuwa anapiga simu hapa. Asipige tena kwa sababu tuko busy kidogo. Tumalizie, si ndio? Haya. So, effective revision, number 1, past paper practice. Revise on past papers. Si tu kuandika notes na kusoma notes. Tafuta past papers. Nani ashafanya paper 1 na paper 2 ya KCSE ya last year 2026? 2025 sorry. Utapata hakuna mtu ameifanya na unangoja mtihani. So you need to revise back using past papers. Use past papers so that you can be able to predict on what is assessed in the exam. Another one is use summaries and flashcards. Use summaries. Instead of reading your notes venye mwalimu alikupatia, create summary notes using your own language, the language that you can understand. The simple English that you can understand. And you can also use flashcards. Like personally mimi mwenyewe I use hizi huwa nazitumia sana. I do use these flashcards. And the reason I use these flashcards is because huwa zinanisaidia sana kukeep memory, na pia sticker notes huwa nazitumia. I write sticker notes and attach them in my diary. I attach them in my books so that I can be able to recall on what I'm studying. So nataka tumalizie because of time. Tutapata tu time ya kuendelea tena. So finally, success comes from consistency. Success comes from consistency. Success comes from consistency. Consistency ni kufanya kitu kwa mazoea, kufanya kurudia, unarudia day by day. When you build discipline, it finally fights for you. So discipline beats talent. You might be talented but you are not disciplined. Hiyo ndio makosa nyingine mnasema ati ule jamaa ni chopa anapitanga bila kusoma. Hakuna kitu kama hiyo. For you to pass, you must be disciplined. It doesn't mean because you are passing, you have a talent, you are good in academics, and you don't keep practicing, utapita. No. You must practice discipline. Every successful person is disciplined. Change your strategy, change your results. If you change your strategy, change your results. So in summary, we have said that ensure you stop cramming and start understanding. Learn the exam strategies. How do you make your understanding better? We have discussed on that. We have also discussed on exam strategies and how to be able to do exam effectively and maximize your results. And by doing that, I believe we've come to the end of our session. We will proceed with something next chenye tutasoma baadaye. Have a blessed night. Muwe na usiku mwema.